Somewhere in us, we know that something doesn't die. Death is a very touchy subject, but obviously, as human beings, we have come to terms with it because you look around, you don't see, everyone knows they're going to go, everyone knows they're going to die, but you look around, you don't see people weeping and wailing that they're going to die one day. But knowing how to handle death when death happens to a significant other or family member or friend or even child is very important. And yes, in the mainstream medium or the regular state of consciousness of most people, we don't want to talk about death. So it's been very little bit brought into the schools, very little bit brought into the churches, because ultimately, this is probably underlying, but somewhere in us, we know that something doesn't die. The essence of who you are doesn't die. The physical body dies, so that significant other or family member or child, the physical body may have withered away, but the presence, the consciousness that they are is everywhere. And so just knowing that can help with that subtle, well, not really subtle. Sometimes it can become very extreme. I've been to funerals where someone passed away, and the last thing that one of the people at the funeral said to the person who passed away was something not so nice, and then they passed away, and then so that adds to the fact that they passed away, and it doesn't come out good. The person was all on top of the casket and so on. But knowing that underneath the, someone called it a, the body, they called it a meat suit. That was very funny, but somewhere underneath, underlying the body is the consciousness that you are. Underlying that person who passed away was the consciousness that you are, which never leaves you, which never left them, because that consciousness that, let's say it flirts away like the wind, it's still there. It just probably reconstructs itself in another form or whatever it may be. But death is not really something to be feared. It is a wonderful thing. It's a, what we can call it, a, there's a word there, a transition into a different state, if you will, which none of us in the human body knows about, but we have had people come back and say they had a near death experience, and they talk about what, but mostly that's mind. Mostly that's mind stuff, because no one has died completely and came back and said this is what I saw. Because once the energy, the consciousness leaves the body, that is it for that body, not for the consciousness. Because if the consciousness left, then it would be able to just leave at any time. But consciousness is something like a frequency or an energy that pervades the whole universe, which it is nothingness, but at the same time it's something. So I call it nothing, no thing, no thing. It's not a thing, but it is. So with handling deaths and different type of deaths, whether it's ego death, where you had a certain way of being and thinking, and then that died, and then you might say, I miss being upset. I don't think you'll say that, but if you do, then that's a certain kind of death. You can handle that a certain kind of way. But the most important one is death of another human being, a significant other, a family member. How to handle that. Mostly, the way I've handled it is by knowing that the essence of what they are doesn't die. It still may be sad to see your dog laying there after 15 years and the body is just cold and stiff and it's hard and you don't see that. But the consciousness that you are, that the dog was or is, when you look into its eyes, when it was in the body, is still there. And that's why you've loved the dog or even the person. Because when you looked at them, there was a transmission of consciousness through each other, a oneness that met, which is always there. You can look at the trash can, you can look at the tree, you can look at the grass in the same way, and you're actually reliving everything. But for this particular topic, we're living that human being by giving full attention, full conscious awareness to whatever you're looking at. And it brings a certain sense of ease when you lose a person. You may still weep, you may still want to hear about other ways to handle death, that's fine. But ultimately, you know that you were never separate from that person. So, how could they die? The consciousness that you are is the consciousness that they are. So, if you're still in this body as a conscious being, they're still with you ultimately, just not in the form that you remember, which is that body or that way of them living and carrying out consciousness in a creative form of human or animal or insect or reptile. A lot of kids have things like that and they pass away. Um, my son himself, we had hamsters that passed away. And for him, growing up with conscious awareness, there wasn't really much suffering. There was more recognizing within itself that I can still I can still feel his presence because the presence of the person in this situation or whoever it is the presence that you are. And the body is just what carried the presence or what carried the consciousness. But the consciousness is still there. And you can feel it. So even, excuse me, while you're weeping, you may notice that, oh, the consciousness is there. And you may still be weeping because that's natural, but you won't be devastated. You won't be able to go, you won't be able to not go on any longer. How some people take death because they never contemplated it. They never thought about it in a certain way, which brings a sense of ease when someone does pass away or an animal passes away. So you have to be able to contemplate thought prior to it happening. If you've never thought about death and you never even thought it could happen, which is kind of crazy, and then it happens not only to you, you're on your deathbed, but someone else that's very close to you, it happens, you're devastated. So, in order to ease or allow the devastation to be a little more at ease, there needs to be some contemplation of death without fear, without judgment, with deep acceptance and deep compassion. And then death will be okay for yourself and for other people because you know that the consciousness that they are is it's you and it's not separate. It pervades the whole universe and they're still there, just not how you see them. But the presence, the consciousness, is there. And they will probably appreciate it more if you recognize that instead of being devastated.